Namaste and welcome to Kaivalya Yoga Gurukulam or KYG. Thank you for taking time to attending this class. Your participation, your feedback, your comments, your questions are greatly appreciated. It is in sharing that we learn. Together we learn. I am but a mouthpiece of the divine. So thank you for joining this class. This learning, as always, with all the other learnings in this path to Kaivalya, that is why it's called classes in Kaivalya Marga or KM. Kaivalya is the path to oneness, where our journey is to realize that we have always been part of the one consciousness, the Shiva consciousness. So this kind of learning is a form of worship, a sadhana, if you will. And therefore, let us do this reverentially, mindfully. We begin with the 3 Oms. So when I went through my talk from the last class, I just wanted to review what I had talked about. I realized how heavy that class was. Some of these subjects are pretty complicated, and sometimes in my own enthusiasm I try to bring in a lot of information into one class because it helps in one way to maintain the continuity of thought. To me, that gets lost if it's split over a week or 3 or 4 days. So I wanted to kind of get it out there. So in this class, I thought I will keep it much lighter, more practical oriented and much lighter, and we'll come back to those 4 forms of sounds that we talked about in the last class. It is a very important class. It is kind of the last one, class number 59. So if you have just bumped into this KM class 60, which is a good landmark. We have completed 60 classes in the Kaivalya Marga, and I'm very grateful. But if this is your first class and you're just coming to the Akasha element, go back to the previous one because that's like the crux. And of course, you go through all the elements that we have covered in all of these Kaivalya Marga classes so far. So in today's class, and I will come back to what I talked about in the last class, perhaps in the next one. I'll try and give it a little bit of break because in the meantime I had received some questions and comments, and so I thought I will focus on that for now. So I promise you, I'm hoping that it will be more practical and more easy to relate to, and it won't be that heavy. However, this is all about sadhana. Sadhana means practice, abhyasa. Just like yogasanas is about abhyasa and practice. So all of this learning has to translate itself into practice because practice alone brings about the transformation, and that transformation, mental transformation, physical transformation and so on, actually gives us the experience. What are you and I here for, right? First-hand experience, not somebody else's experience. Those are nice to listen to, they inspire you, but after a while you're like, why doesn't that happen to me? Why don't I experience divinity? Doesn't that question come to every sadhaka? It does. And therefore, when we focus right from the very beginning, we learn about the theory part of it, we learn the philosophy, and then we begin to focus how to translate that into everyday experience, how to do that. And therefore today's topic was or is, what is a mantra lifestyle? We don't come across these terms very often. You perhaps have not heard of this before. You've heard of a yoga lifestyle, right? You have heard of holistic lifestyle. You've heard of a spiritual lifestyle. What is mantra lifestyle? Is this just a new gimmick, a new term that somebody is throwing about? Maybe, I don't know. But as I thought about what I want to talk today, I wanted to introduce the concept of sound and akasha, the magic and the power of sound that we spoke about in the last class and in the last couple of classes. This is class 6 on the space element. And almost every class we have touched upon the importance of sound. Why? Because akasha, space, ether, is the first element of creation. That is the container in which all the other elements are contained. Then comes Vayu, air, then comes fire, electromagnetism, and then comes Jala or water, and then comes Prithvi, earth, matter, right? All of that has to be contained. Earth has to be contained, and water and fire and air, all of them are contained in this ether, that is space, and space itself, and all of the elements, therefore, are contained where? That is the million-dollar question. That is contained in the consciousness. Whose consciousness? The I, Shiva's consciousness, of which you and I are part of. Not Sundar's consciousness. Sundar's consciousness is a small part of the Shiva consciousness. You call it the Christ consciousness, you can call it Krishna consciousness, you can call it the Allah consciousness, you can call it whatever, the Brahman, if you will, the father of Abraham, if you will. But it is that one consciousness. I like to call it Shiva consciousness. So when we talk about that energy of sound and how to use that energy of sound in Prithvi, in other words, in our dimension of physical reality that we have created, it comes all the way down to Prithvi. So in Prithvi, how do I realize it? In other words, a common question that people ask is, so what is the benefit of all of these chants? How can I realize the benefit of these chants? Especially mantras. Like I said in the last class and a previous couple of classes as well, we all know about sound in general, conversations and so on, but then I want to focus from the point of view of mantra lifestyle. And we have to understand the nature and how we can be mindful in order to release the latent energy in these mantras, in order to invoke these latent energies. Otherwise, it is like having $1 million check in your pocket and not even knowing it is there, or knowing it is there but not knowing your way to the bank, and therefore not being able to cash it. Many of us are in the position today where we have this $1 million check in our pocket. We know it is there. We safeguard it. We preserve it. We are proud of this. We beat our chest and say, this is Sanathana Dharma. This is Vedic mantras. I have it. But unfortunately, we are not able to encash that check. In other words, the benefit of that is not seen. And therefore the younger generations or the modern generation would ask, so what is the big benefit that you're getting? I see you the same as somebody else who has not chanted these mantras and benefited from these sounds. So what is the benefit? And so we are at a point in history, if you will. At one point, Sanathana Dharma, the Vedic mantras, sound itself was revered as the highest, and everything was very mindful. Languages were developed around sounds, like I talked in the last class, Sanskrit. From there we have come down to so many languages and so many sounds and so many distractions that the impact of a mantra, the impact of one particular language like the Sanskrit, which was devised to release the latent power held in sounds, and sounds were given to us, are available to us even to this day, but we are not able to realize the power. The potency of that remains hidden. And therefore, what happens is we become religious about it. We become dogmatic about it. And if it doesn't work, we just blame ourselves, or we say karma, or we say something and walk away. But that is not so. It is our birthright to experience the power of these mantras, to live a very enriched life, to live a very empowered life. We have the ability to cancel all the karmas, if you will. If you are a hardened believer of karma, karma is not a destiny that has come upon you, but it is a result of your own actions and my own actions. But how do I cancel that? Just regretting and saying, sorry, sorry, forgive me is not going to help. So there are mantras given to us that erase these from the depths of our unconsciousness, removes the guilt complex, removes the doership, and brings out the energy. But for that to happen, it sounds good, right? But for that to happen, one has to have a lifestyle. And therefore, let us explore this. What is a mantra lifestyle and why do we need this mantra lifestyle? First and foremost, let's get the physical out of the way. The body. In all these elements, we have talked about the impact. How do we approach earth? In food, what is the kind of, which foods are very focused on the earth element, like potatoes and other things? We talked about that. Water, fire, and so on. I purposely skipped the air and the food part of it because there is very little to be spoken about air and food. Just because some foods are gassy in nature doesn't mean there is vayu in that. That is because of the earth and the water element is where it becomes gassy and so on. It's not purely the air element. Air is just air. Because it goes into your body, that itself becomes food. So there is no food particularly that says about air element. So we didn't touch upon air element and compare it to what kind of food has air in it, right? It doesn't make sense. However, space and food has a role to play. And this is part of the mantra lifestyle. Mantra happens in inner space, right? We are clear about that by now. And that inner space is your brain, your mind, whatever you want to call it. And we'll explore that a little more as we go along. So I need room for the dancer to dance, like we talked about in the Thillai Nataraja temple. The dancer has to dance, there has to be room. The sound has to emanate, so there has to be space, right? And so when that happens, how do we create space in the physical body? And how do we practice that in food? When we learn to create space while eating, then we are taking the first step towards a mantra lifestyle. All this is based on lifestyles taught to us and handed down to us generations after generations. Space, there are many variations of this, food and space. One of them is, while eating itself, how much should I eat? And this is taught to us in the Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita is, for those of you who don't know, it is a sacred collection of 800 verses given by Lord Krishna to the warrior Arjuna. 800 verses of pure enlightenment. One of the best treatises ever on enlightenment. Nevertheless, in that, there is a sentence which says, Aham Vaishwanaro Bhutva, a verse, Praninam Deham Ashritaha, Prana Apana Samayuktaha, Pachami Annam Chaturvidam. So Krishna says, I am the digestive fire and this is when you should eat the food. Prana and Apana is together. We talked about it in the previous classes, but I want to come to Pachami Annam Chaturvidam. In other words, the food that I am eating and I am digesting are of 4 types. Solid, liquid, simple, right? And then there is one which is semi-solid or semi-liquid, however you want to look at it. Like yogurt, curd, ghee, for example, clarified butter or butter, and all of these are neither solid nor liquid, right? So we have solids, liquid, and semi-liquids or semi-solids, you can call them. Okay? Some of the fruits can also come under semi-solids. So these are the 3. What is the 4th kind of food that I am digesting? The fourth one is space. Space. A quarter of your stomach is kept empty. Even for digestion of food and the movement of food and health, we need to leave a quarter of our stomach empty. That is how important space is. So the very first thing in mantra lifestyle is we have to create space when it comes to eating. We have unfortunately become a generation, and this is by no means a statement of judgment. I try not to judge, but it is more a statement of fact, and I'm sure none of you can refute this. Unfortunately, we have become, all of us, we have become a generation that is obsessed with food and eating. Not just one generation, many generations in the last perhaps 100 years, 150 years, for whatever reason. And I'm not talking of just one part of the world, I'm talking of all countries and all continents. We have just in general, if you go shopping, you know it's about, most of the shops are either clothes or food. If you plan a get together, the discussions are all about food. If you plan a wedding, a lot of discussion goes on food. Everything goes around food. Everything centers around food. Yes, it was important for our minds to be focused on what is the next meal, when is the next meal coming, from where it's coming, and so on, at a time when food was very scarce, when we had to go out and hunt for food, or be a farmer or hunters, gatherers, agriculturists, and so on. We have evolved all of that over a couple of millions or 3 million years. We have evolved from all of that. So now, in the last couple of 100 years or so, we have come to a point where we don't really have to worry about where do we look for food. And there is of course a percentage of people who are unfortunately in that position. But if you are watching this show on television, then you obviously can afford your next meal, correct? However, the mindset has not changed. We have become, by the time we finish one meal, we are planning the next meal. And then you get hungry, you eat again and again and again. And so what happens is that space in between food, the interval between food, and while eating food, we generally don't give any space inside our stomach. We eat to the full till we cannot eat anymore. That cannot be part of the mantra lifestyle. Because then the prana that has to be in the chest begins to shift down. In yogic terms, medical science has its own terms, right? They call it the fat in the belly. They call it obesity or weights and all of that. They call about stomach becoming big. But in yoga, we understand that the prana which is supposed to be in the chest begins to shift down. In other words, prana begins to go towards the earth. And that's why we start putting on weight around the belly, because the prana cannot be sustained. So look at children, prana is up here. But today even children, they have this problem where they cannot have energy, they don't have vigor and vitality because of the food. The prana begins to shift down and the belly becomes bigger. There is weight around the waist. The first to come and the last to go is around your buttocks, around your waist, around your hips and the stomach. All this comes because of diet and food. So that's a whole different section. But from the mantra lifestyle point of view, we have to make the first step that we want to take, baby step, right, is when you eat, get up from the table when you know you can eat a little more. Don't wait till you're absolutely full. Then there is no space in your stomach. If there is no space in your stomach, that is the body, then the mind, which is a reflection of the body, will have no space. It will be crowded with thoughts. And if the mind is crowded with thoughts and no space, then there is no space available to plant vibrations and seeds of mantra. Then it just becomes a verbal exercise. It doesn't go deep inside at all. So this is one of the acid tests for a mantra lifestyle. Now, it is in this context of making space. Now, so at a meal, you make space. Give a quarter of your stomach available for air, space. Offer it to space, right? That is one part. The other part is, in between meals, provide space. Don't go on snacking in between meals and so on, that there is no space. The body is constantly digesting and assimilating, eliminating foods constantly. If the body is caught up in that, it is that constant churning. So the mind is again constantly indulging in some kind of thought process, because the mind is simply a reflection of the body. The body is simply a reflection of the mind. These are not two separate entities. They are one and the same. Baba would say, I look at you and I'll know who you are. Because your body, the way you sit, the way you talk, the way you blink your eyes, the way you look here and there, I know exactly what you are thinking, who you are, because your body is a reflection of your mind. The mind is a reflection of the body. They are not two separate entities. That's why in psychology you say you study the mind, but where is the mind really? What is here is the brain. It's a physical organ, but where is the mind? It's $1 million question, right? It is there in every cell in your body, connected by the nadis, breath, pranas, and so on. That's how yoga approaches this subject. And therefore, when you don't give interval between meals and you're constantly snacking every hour, every 2 hours, something or the other. Now it's different if you're on medication and age and all of that. I'm talking in general, because in general, a generation it's all about eating. We seem to be obsessed about eating, as if we are starving, but we are not. There is enough fat in the body that can sustain us for months together, right? So please listen to what I'm saying with a pinch of salt. If you're on medication and things like that, don't jump into conclusions and say I have to skip meals. It doesn't work like that. But I'm talking in general. First, let's understand the concept. Then each one has to work with himself or herself and see how to improvise. So here, what happens is, in between meals, interval is given. That interval between two meals is what our sages and yogis practiced and taught as fasting. This is where fasting plays a role. It provides space, where now that the body has digested the food and the food is sent down for elimination, the body is now calmed down, right? The digestive system has stopped working, the fire element has calmed down, your breathing has come back to normal. Once again, the prana has a chance to become active. Then we can think creative thoughts. Has anyone tried being creative after a heavy meal loaded with carbohydrates? It's very difficult. You eat and then you have dessert and this and that, and then finally you're like, oh gosh, I'm tired, I'm going to sleep. We'll think about it tomorrow morning, we say. So prana doesn't work. That time the apana vayu is pulling the consciousness down and keeps it trapped. So because there is no space for any creative thought to even manifest. No sound vibrations will find anything there. So that is why in yoga, in the path of yoga, in the path of spiritual sadhana, not religion, everything has become, gone into religion, and people fast in order to please a god and things like that. I won't comment on that. We'll leave that. But that's not what we're talking about. I don't ever believe that was the intent of the yogis and the sages who shared with us the secrets of fasting. It is to prepare the body and the mind to invoke the mantras and release the latent powers of the mantras. If that space between meals now is not provided, it could start with a simple thing like between two meals, at least 6 hours during the day. At least 6 hours during the day, at the very minimum. right? A good practice would be the last meal at night would be at 7 o'clock, and I give 12 hours through the night until next morning, absolutely no eating. So at least the next step would be 12 hours of fasting. Give space, which we do. We do in the night when we go to sleep, we sleep 8 hours, so 8 hours is not bad. But you don't eat just before go to bed, and as soon as you get up from bed, you eat immediately. So then, like I said, if you're medication, that's different. But normally, we don't do that. So if you can give 12 hours, and so on. So I promised that I will do a whole different set on fasting. But I want to introduce that concept here, because what we are doing there is creating space. The idea of space is so very important. Otherwise, you will be a great Pandit. You can chant Vedas, mantras very well. Your pronunciation will be superb, and people will say wonderful things about you. You will get a lot of accolades, if you will, and recognitions and all of that. But in the depths of your silence, you cannot experience what that mantra's potency is. Because there is no space in our lifestyle. Create space in your lifestyle, beginning with food. So that is the first one. Provide space while eating food. Make sure there is at least quarter. And I'm talking on the main meals. Leave a quarter part of the stomach empty. And then in between meals, begin to increase the length, the span of space in between meals. Think about that. You don't have to buy what I say. Think about that. Today, intermittent fasting, everything is suddenly being recognized by medical science. And they're saying there's nothing like it. Fasting is the best way to cure, and so on and so forth. But none of that is new. All of that has been always taught to us right from the Vedic times, thousands of years ago. So it's time to reconsider that. Especially if we want to experience the power of sound. As spiritual aspirants, we want that. When we say Namasmarana, we say chanting the name of God, and we have these powerful bijaksharas embedded into these names. How do we realize that energy? Create space. First, in the physical realm, through food. Next comes the mouth. Again, it's a bridge. Now we are going slowly from food, physical, and slowly we'll go into the subtle part of it. The mouth is the karma indriya of space. In other words, the organ of action is the mouth. Tongue is for eating and drinking. The tongue is wet with saliva. So the tongue is the organ for the water element. We have discovered that, studied that. Mouth is where sounds originate from. From me, the sounds originating from me are through the mouth. So that is the karma indriya, the organ of action. One of the most important things that I learned staying with Baba, I had not perfected it then, I have not perfected it now, but I am learning. And the benefit of that learning is so powerful that even small baby steps have reaped great benefits to me, and that is why I am sharing this with all enthusiasm with you all. Baba would be so particular about what we speak and how we speak. He would be so particular about what he speaks and how he speaks. So much so that whatever he would say had the power to manifest itself as truth in this realm. Vak Siddhi it is called. Vak means speech. Siddhi means perfection. Perfection in speech means I say something will happen, it will happen because I have said it. The energy is set into motion and that energy will manifest. No energy on earth can stop that. If my mantra lifestyle is so perfect or near perfect, then the power of that energy becomes even more and more and more. It's like a crystal. The more clean the crystal is, the more beautiful it will become. So the more we are tuning into a mantra lifestyle, as you will understand, the more the energy of sound will happen in us, through us. So sounds originating from me. A very simple and a powerful example that changed my thinking forever was when I was bit by a cobra. And this was 1986 or 85, I think, or 87, I'm not sure, so forgive me. I was bit by a cobra. I love cobras. I was catching them, playing with them and so on. And so there was this 5-foot cobra I had caught in the college, which was in the village side, and there were a lot of them around in South India, in Andhra Pradesh, in Baba's ashram. And so I was called to catch it. I caught it. We took pictures with it. There were maybe 50, 60 boys who had seen me do all of that. And so as I was demonstrating how to catch a snake, it bit me. Long story short, I went to the hospital. They didn't have antidote to give me at that moment. And time was running out. They sent word to Baba. What do? We don't have an antidote right away to give him. And immediately as soon as Baba heard it, he said, that's not a snake. He's simply acting. It's a thorn. He just dismissed it. That's not a snake, just a thorn. He's simply acting. He wants my attention or something like that. He murmured, right? This is just a simple conversation he's had with somebody who went and told him, what do? The doctors called me from the ashram official, right? So that was it. The poison of a cobra, a 5-foot cobra, got arrested, became local. I have a huge scar on my foot to remind me, and I'm grateful for that scar. Though it's not very pleasant because the nerve endings still are very sensitive. So I feel that. But it became a local wound. The foot became swollen. I spent 2-3 weeks in the hospital and so on and so forth. But it became localized as if it was a thorn. Cobra bites don't become localized. They're systemic in nature. They cut through the blood, affect the brain and so on, right? Within minutes. It did not happen to me that afternoon. 2 years later, almost 2 years later, I was sitting at Baba's feet, and as I got up, he looked at my foot and he said, what is that mark, that scar on your right foot? I looked down and then it struck me, oh, this was that snake bite. And so I looked into him and said, Baba, it was that snake bite 2 years ago. And very smilingly, he looked at me and said, it's not a snake, come on, tell me. It was not a snake, right? I told him, no, Baba, it was a snake. I know it, right? Because I have pictures of it still now. So I said, no, Baba, it was a snake. He said, no. Look at that. This is the sounds originating from his mouth. He said, no. For you, it might be a snake. For you, it might be a snake. Because I go on saying it's a snake, right? For you, it might be a snake. But for me, I will never say, from my mouth, I will never say it is a snake. It is a thorn, it is a thorn, it is a thorn. Go. నా నోటు నుంచి అది పామని ఎప్పటికీ రాదు. This was the Telugu he spoke to me. I'll never forget that. I will never, the words that snake bit you will never come from my mouth. Mullu, po. It is a thorn, it is a thorn, it is a thorn. So it took me weeks, months, perhaps years to digest that experience. Because even 2 years later, Baba, who was so particular about sounds in general, first of all, there is silence. And even if you speak, you have to be very, very, very mindful with your words to him. So, and he was too. So, for him, 2 years later also, he did not change the story. his story. He could have said me, yeah, I know it was a snake, but I had willed it, it was a thorn, I did that. He could have said all of that. But he refused at the price of being misunderstood. Because if I had not a little bit of intelligence, I would have said, how come he's wrong? He's completely wrong. It was not a thorn, it was a snake that bit me. Right? He knew it. The doctor had told him. Everything came to him. He had all the facts with him. Because this happened in his presence while he was in the ashram. But he refused to believe that. But what came out of his mouth was the truth. It was localized. It was a thorn. So it got me thinking as to the power of sound that comes from a mouth. It has the power to manifest into reality, however ridiculous it might seem at the time of expression. However impossible it might seem at the time of expression. Then how does that word from Baba's mouth manifest into reality? And why does your word and my word does not manifest into reality? Because of lifestyle. His lifestyle was steeped in spirituality. His thought, word and deed was steeped in the idea of giving and serving and being one and spreading love, and that was it. There was nothing else there. I stayed with him. I saw him 15 years, not 1 or 2 days. So trust me when I say this. That is why he had the energy, the capacity and the power to manifest simply by uttering sounds. And these are not mantras that he chanted when he heard I was bit by a snake. Spoke in normal language, but even that small normal language had the power of a powerful mantra. That is the power of our sound. So if he can do that, you and I can also do it. Because the avatar, incarnation, a master teaches through example. So very easy for us to say, oh, he can do and I cannot. That's the victim mentality. Let's get out of that. Please don't ever entertain those thoughts. Ask to yourself, if he can do it, why can't I? And then his mission, his teaching becomes to bear fruit. And therefore, if we need to, then we need, number one, the mantra lifestyle is absolute mindfulness. I don't even know how much more to emphasize on the sounds, the words, the context, the language that emanate from my mouth. The tone, the volume, the words, everything matters because that creates an energy that is you're sending out into the universe. And that comes back to us. In other words, that is what I am constantly being bathed in, literally around me. I'm creating an aura of energy by my speech. I've said this earlier as well. You could meet a very handsome person, a very beautiful lady or a handsome young man, and you might be enamored by their physical beauty. But if their words are not intelligent, or if they have a squeaky voice, or something goes wrong, then that entire physical beauty becomes secondary. And you'll say, okay. If you're looking for a good bride, you might say, oh, she's very beautiful, but I can't stand that voice. Or if you're looking for a bridegroom, it's the same thing. You might say, this boy is very handsome and great, but no, there's something about his speech. It's nothing I can't tune into, right? Speech is so important. It simply supersedes every other reality that your eyes can see. So the sounds that originate from you, what is the quality of those sounds? What kind of conversations are you having? I have sat in pujas in India and here as well, where right in the middle of chanting, they pick up their phone and check messages, answer a phone. When there is a sound vibration that you're creating, you disturb the rhythm, the melody, the purity of that chanting because you have to pay attention to a phone, for example. Or if there is a little gap, you check your messages and you say, all right, let's get back to puja. It doesn't work that way. It will never work that way. If somebody is saying it will, then he or she is perhaps fooling himself. I'm very clear about this. It is important that we become mindful. If there is a moment where I'm taking for chanting, then my mind has to be completely engaged in How am I chanting it? What is the volume of that sound? How are my pronunciation? What is the kind of sound energy? How's my lips moving? How's my tongue moving? And you're completely engaged in the quality of that sound that is emanating from you. You get lost into that vibrations because there is so many things happening. But what we do is we quickly learn how to chant, we quickly memorize it, and then that's it. And while chanting, our mind is all over the place. We never pay attention. Why? Because we are now focused on, should I do 54 times? Should I do 108 times? Should I do 1008 times? How should I sit? And this and that. And we distract ourselves with numbers and this and that. What flowers should I put? Should I put kumkum as saffron powder? And should I do vibhuti? What should I do? And we complicate the whole process. Well, all the time, all that is required is focus on the sound. There is a great mantra, and we'll talk about it a little bit at least, because I've given a whole lecture on that. It's in our channel, the Gayatri Mantra. A very powerful combination of sounds that opens intuitively to enlightenment, opens the doors intuitively to enlightenment of the highest kind. Dhiyo yona prachodayat. That's it. It's not a prayer for enlightenment. It is a mantra that brings enlightenment, brings you to the doorstep of enlightenment. And you know what Baba would say? Chant it 3 times a day. Maybe twice a day. Chant it 3 times. So what does he mean by that? The quality is far, far, far more important. That Om itself should take you deep inside. And Bhur, Bhuvas, Swaha, your mind has gone beyond the earth and the astral plane and the causal plane. And then you are talking to Tat, Savitur, that. And thus your mind goes into that sphere. You have to travel with the sound and the meaning. Then the mantra becomes active. Not right away, that also will take time, but with that mindfulness. So if I do mantra chanting mindfully, is that enough? What about the rest of the day? What about rest of my conversations? They have to reflect the purity and the power of that mantra that I chanted. So my conversations and all of the other things have also to be in tune with them. Like I said, if enlightenment is the perspective, if not, it's always, you can say, oh, I can't do all that. That's fine. But if you're looking for enlightenment, if you're looking to have a darshan of that deity, if you want that to be your first-hand experience, then that is called tapas, austerity. Then you become very mindful and say, I will not speak a word that is ill of any one person. I could be critical of actions, but not of a person. I could be critical without being judgmental. I can say this particular song you sang is not correct. I will not say you are a bad singer. They are 2 different things, right? So anyway, mindfulness of sounds originating from one's mouth. Then this is sound going out of you. What about sounds entering me? The ears are called the jnana indriyas, the organs of perception, organ of action, organ of perception. For each of these elements, we have discussed that. In space, always remember it's here and here. They get closer and closer. The final space is just this and this. Sounds entering my ears. Somebody else's sound from outside enters my akasha, my inner space. How particular are we if somebody, a stranger, walks into your home? Will you allow that? A stranger simply walking into your home? You wouldn't. First of all, the door won't be open. Let's say you leave the door open. Would you allow a stray dog to just come in? You wouldn't. Would you allow a stray person to simply walk in and eat your food or create ruckus in your house, speak whatever he wants or she wants and do all that? You wouldn't. But yet this is what we do to our internal space. When we mindlessly watch television, mindlessly watch videos, what is happening is, whether it is a phone or the tablet or the television or newspaper or magazine, whatever it is, or somebody talking to me and I'm allowing that conversation, we are allowing sounds to invade our inner space. And guess what? Our reality will manifest based on the sounds that I am nurturing and I am allowing. If your house is open and every Tom, Dick and Harry walks into your house, somebody is coming and a whole bunch decides to cook their own food, goes out, somebody comes and decides to enact movies and films, and somebody comes with a gun into your home, somebody comes with a knife into your home, somebody comes and does romantic dances in your home, all kinds of junk happens in your home. What kind of home will that be? Will you call it a home? No. But that's what we do in our inner space. So, if I take half an hour every day and I chant Gayatri very mindfully, very with full devotion, and everything I do that, I have cleansed my inner space. But that is only half hour. Because the mantras have that power, it cleanses, it cleans the atmosphere in your home, in your mind, in your inner space, and you feel wonderful at the end of it, listening or chanting. But then you have 23 hours and 30 minutes. The rest of the 23 hours, 30 minutes, out of that, even if I spend another 2-3 hours watching something, reading something that is completely in contrast with what I was yearning for, asking for in my mantra, then that is going to completely overwhelm this clean space, and we are once again with the dirty space. So next day morning, what happens? When I chant my mantra, it cleanses it again. But within a few hours, I come and make it again dirty. And that's why you could be chanting Gayatri mantra, you could be chanting Om Namah Shivaya, you could be chanting the most powerful Bijakshara mantras. You might have got initiated by the most powerful, most popular gurus on earth. But ask yourself, be honest to yourself. Apart from some tiny benefit here and there, a streak of grace perhaps, what is the real benefit and why not? Because when I chant and cleanse a space, I immediately throw mud on my own clean home, my own clean inner space. I clutter it. With all kinds of thoughts which are really not required for my existence. Think about it. So you become mindful. I'm not talking of good and bad thoughts at all. So mind you, I'm not using that kind of language because it's not about judging good and bad thoughts. What is useful for me, what is relevant in my life is what I want to know. If it is relevant, I will entertain it to a certain point. And then I will mindfully say, okay, I got what I wanted. Enough. I don't want to go more deep into that because that's enough for me. For example, I do read the news, but I check the headlines. I just go through the headlines and I'm good. Right now as I speak to you, this is June 2022. Alright, what's going on in Ukraine? Alright, the same old thing is going on there. What's going on in American politics? Okay, same old thing. Here, there, I just touch upon. It takes me less than 5 to 7 minutes. Just there. Just to know what is going on. And that's good enough for me. For me to go deeper into any of that, I would ask myself, am I going to change something in what's going on right now? Is there something I'm going to blog about or write about? Am I going to be talking about it? Then I will go deeper into that topic. But otherwise, if what is happening out there doesn't have a direct impact on me today, I'll say, all right, it's good to know these things. I will exercise my power when it comes to vote. Maybe once in 3 years, once in 4 or 5 years, depending on which country we are. I'll do that. But right now, I'm not going to lose my sleep over that. I have so many other things to enrich myself, right? So it is like this. You become very mindful of what kind of sounds enter my ears. And then what kind of sounds I entertain within. When I'm alone, what are the level of my thoughts? What am I thinking? Ask yourself, what do I think when I'm alone? What is the level of my thought? Am I thinking of people, my children, my father, my husband, my wife, my family, this, that? Am I thinking of people and events surrounding me? Which is not bad. Just ask yourself, become mindful. Because sometimes you just get caught and a day passes, a week passes, a month passes, a year passes. Then it becomes a habit to think on those lines. Are we thinking out of habit? What to cook next, what to eat next? and so on and so forth? Do I take time to think of something completely out of the box? Do I take time to be creative? Is there any fine art, like music, dance, painting, something that I'm engaging in? Something where my heart speaks to me, where I can dive myself into that thought process and it almost leads me into a meditation. Do I do that? Has my mantra chanting become a thought? Has a mantra become a thought? Ask yourself, what is the quality of your self-talk? Am I worried in my self-talk? Do I express worries, anxieties in my self-talk? Because that is where reality is being created, in your inner space. All of this determines your reality. So mantra lifestyle makes you very mindful. Wait a minute. I have chanted Aham Brahmasmi. I have chanted I am God, I am God, I am not different from God. So if a thought of worry and anxiety comes, you have to replace it with, listen, there is the God principle in me. And the same God principle is in everyone. There is no birth and death, and eternal life is available to each one. There is really nothing to worry about. Replace that if you can. And do you? So what are you replacing certain thoughts which give you discomfort? How are you replacing them? With what are you replacing them? If my thought is, oh God, please help me, I'm so worried. Oh God, please help me, I'm so confused. Oh God, please help me, I'm so sick. Then sickness is what settles. Confusion is what settles. Worry is what settles. And God waits in the door. Why? Because you are telling him, I am so sick, I am so confused, please help me, I am so this. So I am confused, I am sick, I am worried. This I am, what that is what is manifesting in your inner space. And that inner space is eventually manifesting as Prithvi, which we talked in the last class. Which is why in the first chapter of this Gita that I just spoke about a few minutes ago, the first chapter, Krishna doesn't talk anything. Why? Because Arjuna is fully lamenting. He's got a big laundry list of why, oh, I don't want to fight, I don't want to do this, this is my philosophy I believe in, I just want to be a hermit and this and that. He has got this whole big thing, I, me and mine. So Krishna right in front of him doesn't open his mouth, he's just waiting. That's what happens in your life and my life. God doesn't respond. Not God as a deity somewhere up above, but our own divinity. We are not able to establish a link, a rapport, open that door of communication. It's not happening because it is shut with the self-talk. What is the quality of your self-talk? Can you talk to God? And if you do talk to God, what is the quality of that talk? Are you complaining? Are you asking? Are you speaking? Or you're simply joyfully communicating? You have to ask yourself, because that will determine the quality of your mantra, the power of the mantra, the latency of the mantra, and how soon that mantras that you chant will become effective. The sounds that flame my imagination, it is a part of that self-talk. It is the little video clips that I watch on WhatsApp or on my phone or on television. Any sound or my own thoughts, how are they shaping my emotions? Am I getting disturbed in my emotions? If there's any disturbance in my emotion, know that there is disturbance in my inner space. You know it, right? You and I know it. When somebody is sitting and telling you depressing stories about their lifestyles and they just go on and on and on, after a while what happens to your energy? Your energy also comes down. And you're also like, oh gosh, I am so tired. I just kept listening to this and I just want to go to sleep. You feel. Because so much of that depressing, negative talk, it could have been a gossip or it could have been something that disturbs us. So anything that upsets my emotion or creates very vivid visualization, you have to be very careful of that. You have to become mindful of that. What is the kind of vision I am allowing to happen because visualization is a very powerful energy. That's where the perception happens in the Agni element. It's already beginning to manifest. One has to be very careful. and emotions is the one that fuels it, correct? So emotion is like the gauging, it's like the gauge. The moment I feel my emotions, I'll feel something is wrong. I'm not happy with this conversation. Go away from that. Move away from that politely. That's all. Don't judge anyone. Just move away from that. Because the judging is again in my inner space, I'll create more negativity. No, don't judge. Oh, okay, I can't tune in. Maybe somebody else is tuning in and that's okay for them at that moment. It's not a bad conversation. It is something you may not be able to tune in. And if you cannot tune in, don't allow yourself to become a victim of a conversation. Just politely excuse yourself. Be aware of sounds. Be very, very, very mindful of sounds. Then when you step out for a short walk, you will enjoy the chirping of the birds because you will immediately tune into that frequency. And then you will realize, oh my God, there is so much happening in this little property around my home. There is so much happening. So, one has to pay attention to sounds that could flame your emotions or calm your emotions. That's why bhajans, kirtans, namasmarana and music in general helps in calming the emotion. Not all music, but music. Sometimes there are music meant to inflame, it's specifically done. So, of course, it's understood, it's common sense, right? So, anything that helps you to calm yourself down, you engage in those sounds because that helps me prepare myself for mantra chanting and so on. So, a mantra lifestyle is so important. Don't think just because you're chanting half an hour a day, 20 minutes a day, or even an hour a day is going to help. Like I've said this earlier, it kind of breaks my heart in one sense because we attend pujas where there are great pundits, really good scholars, wonderful people. They all chant and there's a fantastic energy that's created. But immediately after that, there is so much gossip and so much socialization and so much eating that all of that is gone, completely gone. You can do Rudram chanting like that for 100 years and nothing will happen. You will be exactly where you are. Trust me. But if you respect that space that you have created and walk away from that puja, walk away from the ceremony in that heightened state of consciousness, know that that mantra is beginning to get activated. And then maintain that and go back to another one. We are addicted to a particular lifestyle, my dear sisters, brothers and friends. We have to learn to break away from that and create another lifestyle. Because once you open that other door of divinity and that energy opens up, it is so amazing that you will not have any more interest in this. It is just that phase of giving this up and going there. That transition is what that sadhana is all about. But if you stick to this saying, oh, it's too difficult, I cannot change and this and that, then you will be caught up here and nothing can happen. Then it becomes dogma, it's a good pastime and nothing more. So, in conclusion, this is Nada Yoga. Nada Yoga is the highest form of yoga. Nada is Brahman. It is said sound is Brahman himself. The ultimate consciousness can be experienced through sound because it is through sound you go into silence. What kind of sound is therefore the question? And that is where mantra comes in. A mantra is a sound that takes you into that silence. And it is in that silence you hear the voice of God. And I like to end this with that beautiful quote Baba taught us. It is only in the depths of silence the voice of God can be heard. It is only in the depths of silence. So when the mind is confused, if you're not able to control your thoughts, Baba would say, just lie down and take a nap. Don't fight. Just take a nap because you silence the mind. Don't fuel it. Don't run helter-skelter. Take a nap. So, thank you for watching this class. Let us hope the divine guides us, helps us take these baby steps. More than anything, become mindful of the sounds that I utter and the sounds that I listen to. If you're watching a film and a movie and there is something that's disturbing you, simply hit the mute button. That's all. And shut your eyes for that 30 seconds or so till that scene is gone. It's so simple as that. Just hit the mute. That those sounds will not register in your consciousness. It's as simple as that. Once you become mindful, you will be able to devise ways and means to purify and say, this is my temple, this is my home, I am not going to allow anything and everything to enter me. I've had enough. Enough is enough. I'm going to cleanse my home. I'm going to be mindful. Make up that mind. Let today be that day. Don't wait for tomorrow. Tomorrow never comes. Let us, as always, end this class with one Om and three Shantis. And as we go along this path, let us explore some divine chants, most beautiful chants that has that energy within to connect you directly to the highest consciousness. Thank you, as always, for being part of this satsang. Let us end this with one Om and three Shantis. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.